In this episode of Lake Log, I'm high and dry in Jonathan Dickinson State Park, looking for birds. What else would I be doing? I'm not watching trains. Jonathan Dickinson State Park is about 10,000 acres of pristine Florida wilderness, like this pine flatwoods area behind me. I've walked over 30 miles of trails. I've spent probably 30 hours on them. And I'm just starting to figure out how to experience this natural space. My goal when I came here was to create a video that captures the experience of being here. I'm not sure if I can do that. I may have to come back a bunch more. But let me show you what it looks like. There's a hawk on a dead tree over here that I just showed you, and briefly was joined by another one, probably its mate, because there was no squabbling between the two of them. That was cool. It's reported that hawks will stay within a few miles radius of where they're born, and they live out their entire lives in one little area. It's exciting to me because it tells me that if I was to come back here on another day and I was quiet and careful, I have a really good chance of seeing hawks around here again. It might very well be the hawk that I saw earlier on the trail. Probably is. This hawk is actually really close by, so I'm going to move up the trail a little bit back the way I came and see if I can get a little closer to it. Why not? I can't think of anything better to do on a Sunday morning than annoy the heck out of a hawk. So you probably heard that, and the answer is yes, I annoyed the hawk and it flew away before I could get any video of it. Sorry. On another, more overcast day, I had better luck observing and recording some smaller birds. Usually, I don't spend a lot of time recording birds that aren't raptors or waders, but the repeating call of nearby red-winged blackbirds got my attention. I began watching some little warblers in a stand of young melaleuca trees as they feasted on the emerging seeds. These are yellow-rumped warblers of the myrtle variety, which is interesting because the highly invasive melaleuca tree is actually a type of myrtle. Small wonders never cease. And small birds aren't without their own small drama. Or aerobatic skill. There's an old saying that goes something like, if you want to really understand a place, you got to get lost in it. I'm not lost, I don't think. But I am deeply immersed in the Florida landscape, and my understanding of it is growing with every trip here. And if you want to understand the landscape you're in, you got to be quiet. This is a northern flicker. Completely new to me, the northern flicker is a member of the woodpecker family, and specifically, this is a yellow-shafted northern flicker. I watched it go into a hollow tree, thinking it was nesting there. I went back the next week expecting to see it in the same tree. It wasn't anywhere to be seen. Pileated woodpeckers are abundant in this park, and their unmistakable size and brilliant crimson crest feathers make them stand out dramatically, even if only for a brief time. I had really been hoping to capture the loggerhead shrike, and one cloudy morning in late January, I followed the sound of one and found it in a pine tree just off the White Loop Trail. They sometimes make this call. It wasn't alone, and this pair shared a peck on the cheek like a married couple, just checking in before going off to work. The loggerhead is a small bird with an oversized reputation. Also known as the butcher bird, it commonly impales its prey on thorns or barbed wire fences, like this tarantula skewered by a loggerhead in Arizona. The beak shape allows them to quickly kill a small vertebrate by severing its neck. Lovely. A little blue heron, in its breeding plumage, was doing its best to avoid eye contact with me, and I loved the resulting image. On the other side of the lake, a great blue heron, and a dripping wet osprey, trying to dry out for the next fishing attempt. It tolerated me for a long time, mostly because it was waterlogged, but also because I was crouched low, kept very still, and exhibited no threat. While I was crouched down recording the osprey, an alligator moved from the far side of the lake towards me. Gators prefer smaller prey, and I must have looked small enough to be appetizing. I came across some smaller gators in a pond off one of the service roads. These were about 3 to 4 feet long. I stepped under the shade of the cypresses along Kitchen Creek. It was noticeably cooler and was a lush contrast to the drier pine flatwoods I had just left. Giant air plants clung to the sides of these ancient trees, and as I was looking up, I nearly stepped on a southern black racer, motionless in the twigs and leaves at my feet. Near the bridge over Kitchen Creek, I came across another gator, sunning on the bank. It was easily all of 10 feet or more. The water birds I am used to recording were always very shy and quite far away from me, as were the many hawks I came across. But the smaller birds were less fearful and easier to get close to. There's something about seeing a wild blue jay that is more exciting than seeing the suburban blue jays that often visit my backyard. All birds are wild, essentially, but the common birds I encountered in the park were somehow different, tougher, commanding a bigger presence, something like that. Although I wasn't lost, I was beginning to enjoy losing myself in everything around me, and in all of the questions swirling around in my head. And when the birds were making themselves scarce, I got lost in the plants and flowers. Personally, I think that there's a certain amount of skill involved in getting lost intentionally. You have to adopt the mindset that time and distance and destination mean absolutely nothing to you. As soon as you adopt that mindset, getting lost is really, really fun. This is calopogon, also called grass pink. It's a form of terrestrial orchid. Imagine that, an orchid growing on the side of a dry trail, all by itself. St. John's wort is common in the sandy, dry service roads that crisscross the park. It has been used as medicine for various human ailments since the 1st century AD. Yellow seems to be a common flower color around here. This is called false yellowhead. The flowers smell awful, but the oil in the leaves is used to cure victims of jellyfish stings in the Mediterranean. Prairie goldenrod, a good butterfly attractor, and has been used by Native Americans to treat jaundice. Yellow milkwort was thriving on the floor of the pine flatwoods. The Seminoles used it to treat snake bites and heart conditions. This is called spreading lupin, and I found it growing near the flowering netted pawpaw. It gets the netted part of its name from its root system. Netted pawpaw is a host to the caterpillar form of the zebra swallowtail butterfly. This is called coral bean, and it's quite tall, around 6 feet or so. It's also known as Cherokee bean, and in Mexico, they use a toxin in this plant to kill rats. I walked past so many of these plants, this is false pennyroyal, before I stopped to take a closer look at any of them. And I only did that because there were bees gathering nectar from the tiny flowers. Recording bees in slow motion with a giant zoom lens intended for bigger wildlife is enormously satisfying, and you can see just how tiny these flowers are. And here is the zebra swallowtail butterfly, also interested in the nectar of the false pennyroyal. I had stopped to watch something that occurs often in the springtime, whether we are there to see it or not. And although it wasn't a bird of prey or a giant reptile, it was no less fascinating. And I was beginning to understand a little more about the charred trees I kept seeing and the importance of the cycle of fire and renewal. Fire clears the forest floor, and when the native plants regrow, every living thing benefits from the change. This is an American kestrel, which thrives in open woodlands with low undergrowth. I spotted it quite by chance, preening in the shimmering midday heat. It was ridiculously far away from me, but it didn't matter. Here's another faraway bird, the scrub jay. I zoomed in, and then I enlarged again, and again. And then I used AI to enhance the image. I did have a much closer encounter with a scrub jay along the park road. This one wears bands placed there by researchers. The more I watched, the closer the scrub jay got to me. It was crazy. This bird would not fly away until it realized that I wasn't going to feed it. Then it lost interest. It is illegal to feed a Florida scrub jay, but because it had been fed before, it had no fear of me at all. The endangered scrub jay thrives when the forest burns, or after the forest burns. Prescribed burns in the park help keep the undergrowth down and the scrub jay population from dwindling. Curious and charismatic, the scrub jay is one of Florida's greatest natural treasures, and Jonathan Dickinson State Park is home to one of the largest scrub jay populations. On that same morning, I watched a perfectly demonstrated example of kleptoparasitism between a white ibis and a hawk. It happened fast and far away, but aside from the scrub jays, I was used to being the distant bird watcher. The ibis strikes it rich with a huge fish, but then tries to flee when it realizes the hawk is on its tail. The ibis drops its catch, and the hawk takes possession. In the natural world, possession isn't 9/10 of the law, it's 100% of the law.
The bigger bird isn't always the bravest, though, and I was lucky to capture this hawk as it became the target of a very angry mockingbird. To defend its territory and show the hawk it means business, this little mocker makes a daring pass to count coup on its larger rival. Mockingbirds hold a special place in my personal bird history. They were seemingly everywhere around our home when I was growing up. I woke up to the sounds of mockingbirds, watched them fly in and out of the yard, and even watched my mom raise 2 fledglings in a cardboard shoebox on the kitchen counter. They are highly intelligent. Watch as this mocker positions itself just so, the shade of the branch covering its eye so it can study its surroundings glare-free. Again, there is something different about wild mockingbirds. I've watched as suburban mockers visited my bird bath, like this one that showed up one afternoon. It had a special beak, either from birth or injury, but enjoyed the fresh water nonetheless. A mockingbird can have a repertoire of over 100 calls. Sometimes, when you think you are hearing a lot of birds, it's only one. There is something about the eyes of a mockingbird to captivate my imagination. They can look both concerned and non-bothered at the same time. And when a mockingbird stares at you, they seem to know more about you than they really should. This mockingbird just regurgitated a pellet. The pellet is made up of non-digestible material, bones or scales. I found this one standing on a broken stump, 1 foot propped up as if it was ready to launch at any second. And then the very next weekend, another mocker on the same perch. Was it the same bird? I got a closer look at the stump, and what I thought was a burn mark was actually something else. Yeah, the mockingbirds stop here a lot, don't they?
You know, as I've said before in Lake Log, I don't really know anything about nature and birds, but I'm learning. And that's the fun of it. The most fun thing in life is realizing that you don't know something and that you have a chance to learn it. I gotta be careful that I don't squat down on a rattlesnake. I was so busy trying to find a place to set this camera up so I could talk to it that I walked right past a tree where a bald eagle was and watched it fly away silently to another tree. And that's a good lesson for when you're out here. Be quiet, walk softly, and listen. I can't imagine changing this landscape in any way at all. I can only see it going on like this forever.